The wind howled through the Himalayan mountain pass, a relentless symphony of ice and stone that masked the true nature of Dr. Amara Patel's discovery. Her team's expedition had begun as a routine geological survey, tracing rare mineral deposits in one of the most isolated regions of Nepal. Now, everything had changed. The escape pod lay half-buried in a glacial crevasse, its metallic skin a stark contrast against the pristine white landscape. Amara's breath frosted in the air as she carefully brushed away layers of accumulated ice and rock fragments. Her fingers, protected by high-tech thermal gloves, traced intricate geometric patterns etched into the pod's exterior, designs that defied any known terrestrial manufacturing process. Dr. Marcus Chen, the team's xenomaterials expert, approached with a portable spectral analyzer. "These alloys," he muttered, more to himself than to anyone else, "they're impossible. The molecular structure suggests a level of metallurgical engineering we can't even conceptualize." Nearby, Dr. Elena Rodriguez, their senior xenobiologist, carefully mapped the surrounding terrain. Something about the crash site felt deliberate, not random. The precision of the pod's landing, the specific geological features of this location, it all suggested more than mere chance. A soft pulse from inside the pod caught Amara's attention. Not a mechanical pulse, but something more organic, something alive. "Cut the external shielding," she ordered, her voice steady despite the adrenaline surging through her system. The team had trained for first contact scenarios, but training and reality were two very different experiences. The pod's exterior began to dissolve, revealing a complex internal structure that seemed to breathe and shift like a living organism. Layers of biomechanical interfaces became visible, pulsing with a soft bioluminescent light that reminded Amara of deep-sea creatures. Inside, 3 figures lay suspended in what appeared to be a form of stasis fluid. They were humanoid, but distinctly alien. Their skin a shifting pattern of iridescent scales that seemed to absorb and reflect light in impossible ways. Each was connected to the pod's systems through what looked like organic neural interfaces, thin tendrils of biomechanical material weaving between skin and machinery. Biological and technological integration beyond anything we've ever seen, Marcus whispered, his analytical mind racing to comprehend the technology before him. Elena moved closer, her medical training overriding any sense of caution. "They're alive." "Barely. But their physiological parameters are unlike anything in our medical databases." She pulled out a complex scanning device, its multiple sensors working overtime to gather data. The pod's quantum communication matrix suddenly flickered to life. A holographic warning erupted around them, filling the cramped space with a 3-dimensional projection of star systems, conflict zones, and what appeared to be a galactic migration pattern. Genocide protocol initiated. Last cellular horas DTGT. The warning repeated, its message clear and terrifying. These weren't just refugees, they were the absolute last of their kind. Amara's satellite phone buzzed, an encrypted message from their base camp. Unusual electromagnetic signatures had been detected in the region. Something was searching, and it was getting closer. "We need to move," she said, her mind already calculating their options. The pod was too large and complex to transport conventionally, and they couldn't risk leaving it behind. As if responding to her thoughts, one of the alien figures twitched. A single iridescent eye opened, scanning the human faces with an intelligence that suggested they were being evaluated as much as the humans were examining them. The eye focused on Amara. A quantum communication pulse burst forth, overwhelming their communication systems. Fragments of information, memories, and warnings flooded their devices, a desperate transmission from a dying civilization. Outside, the mountain storm intensified. But Amara knew the real storm was just beginning. Asterisk to be continued asterisk. The underground research facility, beneath the Himalayan research station, hummed with an unnatural quiet. Dr. Amara Patel watched as the quantum medical interface stabilized the 3 alien survivors, each breath a delicate negotiation between their biology and the human-adapted life support systems. Zaralyn, the elder of the survivors, was the first to regain full consciousness. Her movements were deliberate, each gesture carrying the weight of a civilization's final hope. When she spoke, her voice resonated through the room not just as sound, but as a complex harmonic that seemed to vibrate through the very molecular structure of their equipment. "The crystal," Zaralyn said, her iridescent eyes fixing on Amara. "It must not be lost." Dr. Marcus Chen carefully extracted the quantum data crystal from the escape pod's core. It was no larger than a human thumb, yet it pulsed with an internal light that suggested containment of impossible amounts of information. Fractal patterns shifted beneath its surface, hinting at computational complexities far beyond human understanding. "We've only begun to analyze its outer layers," Marcus explained, his hands moving with surgical precision. "The data compression is unlike anything in our computational models. It's not just storing information, it's preserving an entire civilization's essence." Elena Rodriguez studied the biological readings of the survivors. Their physiology was a marvel of adaptive engineering. Microscopic symbiotic organisms moved through their bloodstream, constantly repairing cellular damage, adapting to the new environment with a speed that defied conventional biological understanding. A warning chirp from their security systems broke the moment of scientific wonder. "Electromagnetic signature detected," announced the facility's AI system. "Unknown origin. Consistent with previous drone reconnaissance patterns." Amara's military background kicked in. She had carefully selected this team, each member chosen not just for their scientific expertise, but for their ability to adapt under pressure. The research facility was more than a scientific outpost. It was a fortress. Zaralyn's hand moved with unexpected speed, touching a seemingly random pattern on the data crystal. The device responded, projecting a holographic map that filled the entire room. Star systems flickered and died, showing a systematic elimination of entire civilizations. "The Vornak do not conquer," she said, her voice carrying a profound sorrow. "They erase. Complete and total extinction is their only acceptable outcome." The hologram zoomed in on specific conflict zones. Civilizations represented by intricate geometric patterns winked out of existence, each disappearance marked by a subtle color change that suggested more than mere data. These were memories, histories, entire ways of being. Marcus zoomed in on one particular region. "These patterns," he muttered, "they're not just records. They're a form of living memory. Each extinction is recorded not just as information, but as a form of collective grief." Elena noticed something else. Scattered throughout the galactic map were small, almost imperceptible points of resistance. Most were long dead, but a few pulsed with a defiant light. "We were not the first to resist," Zaralyn said, understanding their unspoken question. "But we might be the last chance." The facility's quantum shield began to fluctuate. Something was probing their defenses, testing their technological boundaries with a precision that suggested more than random surveillance. Amara's satellite communication device chirped, an encrypted message from a seemingly unrelated research station in Chile. Coordinates, a set of mathematical equations that looked like nothing more than pure theoretical physics. But Zaralyn's reaction told a different story. Her entire body tensed, the symbiotic organisms beneath her skin creating complex defensive patterns. "They're closer than you think," she whispered. Outside the facility, the Himalayan storm intensified. But the real storm was just beginning to take shape. The Quantum Integration Lab looked like a battlefield of impossible technologies. Holographic interfaces danced around Dr. Marcus Chen, his fingers moving in intricate gestures that seemed to weave reality itself. Beside him, Zaralyn watched with a mixture of hope and trepidation, her body's symbiotic systems creating subtle interference patterns that challenged every known law of physics. "It's not just about merging technologies," Marcus muttered, sweat beading on his forehead. "We're essentially creating a new form of computational language." The Lyrian quantum data crystal had begun to interface with human systems in ways no one could have predicted. What started as a careful scientific investigation had transformed into something far more profound, a conversation between two entirely different technological paradigms. Dr. Elena Rodriguez monitored the biological interfaces. The Lyrian survivors' physiology was acting as a living bridge, their neural networks creating dynamic pathways that allowed for unprecedented data translation. Each moment of integration risked total system collapse, or a breakthrough that could redefine human understanding of technology. Amara Patel stood at the room's edge, her military background giving her a strategic perspective that the scientists often missed. She watched as complex energy signatures began to build, drawing power from seemingly impossible sources. A warning flashed across the primary monitoring system. Energy consumption was spiking, drawing power from multiple unconventional sources. Quantum entanglement points were forming spontaneously, creating a network that defied traditional understanding of communication and energy transfer. Zara Lynn's voice cut through the technological chaos. "The Vornak believe technology is a weapon of control," she explained. "For my people, it was always a living system of communication and adaptation." The room itself seemed to breathe. Walls composed of adaptive materials began to shift, creating complex geometric patterns that resonated with the quantum integration process. Holographic displays showed multiple simultaneous potential outcomes, each one a potential future, each one a possible path of resistance. Marcus discovered something extraordinary. The Lyrian technology wasn't just advanced, it was alive. Each computational process was more akin to biological adaptation than traditional machine logic. Information didn't just flow, it evolved, mutated, found new pathways of least resistance. "We're not building a defense system," he realized aloud. "We're cultivating an organism." Elena's medical background provided crucial insights. The technology behaved like an immune system, constantly analyzing potential threats, creating adaptive responses that could modify themselves in real time. It was learning, growing, becoming something entirely new. A sudden burst of energy caused the facility's power grid to fluctuate. Backup systems came online, but something fundamental had changed. The integrated system was now drawing power from sources beyond the facility. Quantum vacuum fluctuations, ambient electromagnetic fields, even the minute energy differences between atomic states. Zara Lynn's body began to glow, her symbiotic systems synchronizing with the developing technological network. "The first true communication is about to begin," she whispered. The quantum data crystal pulsed. Coordinates began to stream across multiple communication bands, not just electromagnetic, but quantum, gravitational, even forms of communication humanity had never previously detected. Amara's encrypted communication devices went haywire. Fragments of intercepted communications from research stations worldwide began to coalesce. Scientific outposts, military installations, seemingly unrelated research centers suddenly showing similar quantum anomalies. Estimated time to Vornak pursuit vector. The facility's AI announced, 47 hours and counting. But something had changed. This was no longer just about defense. This was about transformation. The room fell silent, save for the subtle hum of a technology that was writing its own rules of existence. The first Vornak strike team materialized without warning, their quantum displacement technology rendering them momentarily invisible to conventional detection systems. They were nothing like human military forces, more like living weapons, their bodies a seamless integration of biomechanical armor and computational intelligence. Captain Aria Chen, a former special operations commander now working with the research team, was the first to react. Her augmented combat interface, hastily integrated with the Lyrian quantum systems, transformed from a passive monitoring tool into an active defensive network. "Perimeter breach in Sector 3, she called out, her voice calm despite the impossible odds. The facility's adaptive architecture began to shift, molecular structures rearranging themselves into complex defensive configurations. Zara Lynn stood at the center of the facility, no longer just a survivor but a critical component of their defensive strategy. Her body became a living conduit, the symbiotic organisms within her creating intricate interference patterns that disrupted the Vornak team's quantum synchronization. Dr. Marcus Chen's research took an unexpected turn. The quantum integration they had been developing wasn't just a defensive mechanism. It was a living, evolving system of communication and resistance. Each moment of contact with the Vornak technology provided new data, new potential strategies. The strike team moved with inhuman precision. Their weapons defied conventional physics, energy projections that could simultaneously exist in multiple quantum states, capable of destroying matter at the atomic level. Where a human weapon would create destruction, these created absolute erasure. Elena Rodriguez observed something extraordinary. The Lyrian survivors, thought to be too weak to fight, began to interface directly with the defensive systems. Their neural networks created complex computational loops that anticipated and redirected Vornak attack vectors. They're not just fighting, Elena realized. They're having a conversation through combat. Aria's augmented combat interface began to decode the Vornak's communication patterns. Each attack was more than a physical assault. It was a complex mathematical language, a form of computational interrogation designed to break down and analyze potential resistance. The facility itself became a weapon. Walls shifted, creating quantum-locked spaces that trapped and redirected Vornak energy weapons. Adaptive materials absorbed and redistributed incoming energy, turning the attacker's own technology against them. Zara Lynn's voice cut through the chaos. They seek total erasure, she explained, her body now fully integrated with the facility's defensive systems. Not just of life, but of potential, of possibility. The battle lasted less than 7 minutes, but those 7 minutes rewrote everything humanity understood about defensive technology, about first contact, about the nature of resistance. As the last Vornak soldier fell, the quantum data crystal pulsed. For a brief moment, it projected a holographic map showing hundreds of similar conflict zones across the galaxy, each one a testament to civilizations that had fought and fallen. Zara Lynn collapsed, her body momentarily overwhelmed by the quantum stress of the defensive interface. But as she fell, she whispered a phrase that sent chills through everyone present. They were just the first wave. Outside, the Himalayan mountains stood silent. But something fundamental had changed. Humanity was no longer just observing the galaxy. They were actively participating in its most critical conflict. Aria's communication device chirped. An encrypted message from a seemingly unrelated research station in the Antarctic. Coordinates, a set of mathematical equations that looked like nothing more than pure theoretical physics. But nothing was random anymore. Dr. Amara Patel's quantum communication network looked nothing like traditional communication systems. Nodes of information danced across a holographic globe, each connection a living, breathing pathway of shared intelligence that defied conventional understanding of data transmission. In a converted nuclear submarine facility beneath the Pacific, a team of international researchers worked in perfect synchronization. Dr. Hiroshi Nakamura, a quantum computing expert from Tokyo, manipulated holographic interfaces that seemed to breathe with living intelligence. Beside him, Dr. Aisha Okoi from the Lagos Technological Institute tracked complex computational patterns that emerged from the Lyrian quantum integration. The network was more than a communication system. It was becoming a living organism. We're not just sharing information, Hiroshi muttered, his fingers tracing impossible geometric patterns in the air. We're creating a global neural network that adapts in real time. Fragments of intelligence began to coalesce. Research stations in Antarctica, deep-sea observatories, high-altitude research platforms, all began to show similar quantum anomalies. What had begun as isolated incidents were now revealing themselves as a coordinated global phenomenon. Dr. Marcus Chen's earlier work on quantum integration was proving to be more than theoretical. The Lyrian technology didn't just connect, it transformed. Each node of communication became a potential point of resistance, a living computational system that could anticipate and redirect potential threats. In a secure facility beneath the Ends, Dr. Elena Rodriguez discovered something profound. The quantum communication network was collecting more than just data. It was preserving potential, alternative scenarios, potential futures that could have been erased by the Vornak's systematic elimination of civilizations. It's a memory preservation system, she explained to Amara during their encrypted communication. Not just of information, but of potential, of hope. The global research team began to understand the true nature of their discovery. The Vornak didn't just destroy civilizations, they erased potential futures. Each elimination was not just a physical act, but a computational one, removing entire streams of potential development. Zara Lynn, still recovering from the previous encounter, provided crucial insights. Her body continued to interface with the developing network, her symbiotic organisms creating complex communication pathways that humans were only beginning to understand. "Your species has something they cannot comprehend," she told Amara. "Randomness, unpredictability, the ability to find solutions in chaos." Military intelligence agencies worldwide began to notice something strange. Classified research projects that had been isolated for decades were now showing unexpected connections. Technological developments that seemed random were revealing themselves as part of a larger, more complex pattern. A quantum pulse swept across the global network. For a brief moment, every connected research station received a burst of information, coordinates, mathematical equations, fragments of technological understanding that seemed to emerge from nowhere and everywhere simultaneously. Dr. Aisha Okoye tracked the pulse's origin. It wasn't coming from a single point, but from multiple potential sources, each existing in a state of quantum superposition. "They're not just sending a message," she realized. "They're testing our ability to receive." The quantum data crystal continued to pulse, its fractal patterns becoming more complex with each passing hour. What had seemed like a simple storage device was revealing itself to be something far more profound, a living repository of potential futures. Amara's encrypted communication device received a final message, coordinates that matched no known geographical system, a set of mathematical equations that seemed to exist between known dimensional frameworks. The global network held its breath. Something was coming. The research facility's primary quantum projection chamber looked like nothing so much as a cathedral of impossible mathematics. Dr. Marcus Chen stood at its center, the Lyrian data crystal suspended in a field of quantum-locked probability, its fractal patterns expanding and contracting in ways that defied classical understanding. "It's not a record," Marcus breathed, his hands moving through holographic interfaces that shimmed like liquid light. "It's a living map of potential extinction." Zara Lynn's body had become increasingly translucent, her physiological boundaries blurring as she integrated more deeply with the developing quantum network. When she spoke, her voice emerged from multiple points simultaneously, a phenomenon that suggested she was no longer confined to a single point of existence. "The Vornak do not simply destroy," she explained, her words creating complex geometric patterns in the air. "They prune the multiverse. Every civilization they erase is a calculated removal of potential futures." The holographic projection expanded, revealing a terrifying landscape of galactic development. Entire spiral arms of potential civilizations had been systematically removed, not just destroyed, but retroactively eliminated from the fabric of potential existence. Dr. Elena Rodriguez noticed something extraordinary. Scattered throughout the projection were minute, almost imperceptible nodes of resistance, tiny points of light that represented civilizations that had found ways to resist, to persist, to survive against impossible odds. These aren't just survivors, Elena realized. These are quantum echoes of hope. Captain Arya Chen's military background provided a strategic overlay to the scientific discovery. The projection revealed not just past events, but potential future conflict vectors. Quantum probability streams showed multiple potential invasion routes, each one a complex mathematical dance of potential destruction and resistance. The data crystal began to pulse with increasing intensity. Its internal structure became visible, not as a solid object, but as a living computational matrix that existed simultaneously in multiple states of potential information. Amara Patel watched as the facility's quantum shields began to resonate with the crystal's frequency. Something fundamental was changing. The very nature of their defensive systems was evolving beyond traditional understanding of technology and resistance. A burst of quantum communication swept through the facility. Fragments of information from research stations worldwide converge. Scientific outposts, military installations, academic research centers, all showing similar quantum anomalies. But this was more than just data transmission. It was a form of collective consciousness taking shape. Zara Lynn's body began to break down into quantum information streams. Humanity's greatest strength, she said, her form becoming increasingly abstract, is its capacity to exist in states of uncertainty, to find solutions in chaos. The projection revealed something shocking. The Vornak's systematic elimination of civilizations wasn't just about physical destruction. It was a complex computational process of removing potential futures that didn't align with their understanding of galactic development. Marcus discovered the true nature of the data crystal. It wasn't just a storage device or a weapon. It was a quantum seed, a repository of potential futures that could be activated under specific conditions. "They're not just fighting a war," he whispered. "They're conducting a massive computational experiment in galactic evolution." Aria's communication systems lit up. Encrypted messages from multiple global defense networks began to converge. Coordinates that matched no known geographical system. Mathematical equations that existed between dimensional frameworks. The quantum projection chamber reached a critical point of quantum entanglement. For a brief moment, the entire facility existed in a state of pure potential, every possible outcome simultaneously present. Something was coming, and humanity was about to change everything. The first full Vornak battle group emerged from quantum space like a wound in reality. 17 massive vessels, each a living computational system that defied traditional concepts of spacecraft design. Their hulls shifted and breathed, molecular structures in constant flux, weapons systems that existed in multiple potential states simultaneously. General Kazuki Nakamura watched from the International Quantum Defense Platform, a construct that was no longer simply a human creation. The platform had become a living network, integrated with fragments of Lyrian technology, powered by computational systems that drew energy from the quantum vacuum itself. "They're not just coming to destroy," Nakamura observed, his augmented interface tracking impossible trajectories. "They're coming to erase our potential." Dr. Amara Patel stood beside him, the quantum data crystal now fully integrated into the platform's defensive matrix. Her body had changed. Subtle symbiotic interfaces developed during their work with the Lyrian survivors allowed her to perceive the incoming threat in ways no pure human could. The global defense network was unlike anything in human history. Research stations, military installations, and civilian technological centers had transformed into a single living computational organism. Each node was both a defensive position and a potential point of resistance. In the Deep Pacific Research Station, Dr. Aisha Okoye manipulated quantum interference patterns that could redirect entire weapon systems. Beside her, holographic interfaces showed potential conflict scenarios, not just military projections, but complex mathematical models of potential galactic futures. The Vornak's approach triggered something unexpected. The quantum communication network that had been developing across the planet began to resonate at a fundamental frequency. It was no longer just a communication system. It had become a collective consciousness. Zara Lynn, now more quantum information than physical being, provided critical insights. "Your species creates meaning in uncertainty," she communicated across multiple channels. "The Vornak cannot comprehend this." Captain Aria Chen's combat interface had evolved beyond traditional military technology. She could now perceive potential attack vectors as complex mathematical probabilities, redirecting incoming threats before they fully materialized. The battle began not with weapons, but with information. Quantum pulses swept across the solar system. The Vornak's computational systems began to encounter something they had never experienced, a defense mechanism that was fundamentally unpredictable. Human technological systems adapted in real time, drawing strength from their own diversity and capacity for unexpected solution. Military satellites transformed. Communication networks became weapons. Even civilian technological infrastructure became part of a global defensive matrix that the Vornak could not fully comprehend. Dr. Marcus Chen discovered the true nature of their resistance. The human Lyrian integrated system wasn't just defending. It was proposing alternative computational models of existence. Each defensive action was simultaneously a form of communication, a challenge to the Vornak's understanding of galactic development. The quantum data crystal pulsed. For a moment, every connected system across the planet saw the same vision, a map of potential futures, each one a testament to the power of unexpected potential. Nakamura watched as the first Vornak vessel began to destabilize, not through traditional weapons, but through a form of computational resistance that undermined its very existence. We're not just fighting, he realized. We're rewriting the rules of conflict. The battle entered its critical phase. Space itself seemed to bend around the conflict, potential futures colliding and negotiating in real time. Something fundamental was about to change. Silence descended after the conflict. Not the silence of destruction, but of profound transformation. The quantum data crystal at the heart of humanity's defense network pulsed with a soft, almost living light. Around it, the remains of the Vornak battle group hung suspended, not destroyed, but fundamentally altered. Dr. Amara Patel stood at the observation window of the International Quantum Defense Platform, her body now a subtle fusion of human biology and the symbiotic technologies they had developed. The first rays of sunlight caught the intricate quantum interfaces that now traced her skin like living circuitry. "We didn't win," she said quietly to General Kazuki Nakamura. "We negotiated." The transformation was total. The Vornak computational systems had encountered something entirely outside their understanding, a form of resistance that wasn't about destruction, but about potential. Humanity had not fought a war. They had proposed an alternative way of existing. Dr. Marcus Chen's research team was already analyzing the profound implications. The conflict had been a conversation, a complex computational dialogue that challenged the very foundations of the Vornak's understanding of galactic development. In a research station deep beneath the Antarctic ice, Dr. Aisha Okoi tracked the quantum communication network as it began to stabilize. What had started as a defensive system was now something far more complex, a living network of potential futures, of preserved civilizations, of hope. Zeralin, now more of a quantum consciousness than a physical being, provided the final pieces of understanding. The Vornak had been conducting a massive computational experiment in galactic evolution, eliminating potential futures that didn't conform to their understanding of progress. Humanity had offered something entirely unexpected: chaos. Potential. The capacity to find meaning in uncertainty. The quantum data crystal began to project a new holographic map, not of destruction, but of preservation. Fragments of civilizations that had been on the brink of elimination now pulsed with renewed potential. The Vornak's computational systems had been fundamentally rewritten. Captain Arya Chen watched as the first diplomatic communication came through. It was not a surrender, but an invitation, a request to understand. The Interstellar Preservation Coalition was born in that moment, not as a military organization, but as a collaborative network of potential. Species that had been on the verge of extinction now found themselves part of a larger conversation. "We're not conquerors," Amara explained to the first Vornak diplomatic envoy. "We're guardians of potential." The quantum communication network expanded. Research stations around the globe, and now, across multiple star systems, began to share information in ways that defied traditional understanding. It was more than communication. It was a form of collective consciousness that respected individual potential. Dr. Elena Rodriguez discovered something extraordinary in the medical research wing. The symbiotic technologies they had developed were now offering unprecedented opportunities for healing, for adaptation, for understanding different forms of life. Nakamura looked out at the transformed space around the defense platform. The conflict had rewritten the rules of galactic interaction. Humanity was no longer an unknown, underestimated species. They were now guardians of a more complex understanding of existence. The quantum data crystal pulsed one final time. A message echoed across the network, not in words, but in a complex mathematical language of potential and hope. Something fundamental had changed. The universe would never be the same.